Encyclopedia Log, the four heavyweight kings at the twilight of the black and white age. In the late 1940s, Joe Louis was the most beloved champion in the world, transcending racial division even though he was a black man. He helmed boxing's marquee division as its super people's champion and face. As his long, unblemished reign wound down, he unknowingly jump-started a four-man rivalry which would shape the landscape even past his retirement. Jersey Joe Walcott, Ezzard Charles, Rocky Marciano, and Joe Louis himself. These are the four kings who helmed the twilight of the heavyweight division's black and white age. These are the sagas of their wars from 1947 to 1955. BoxingPedia Log, December 5th, 1947. Joe Louis is making the 24th defense of his heavyweight championship against Jersey Joe Walcott. Walcott himself has 11 losses and was a journeyman before earning the shot. He was even Louis's sparring partner before. Jersey Joe was of so little regard that this wasn't a title bout before Louis changed his mind and granted it. It's for these reasons that he was the logical 10-1 underdog against the super champion of 10 years. What's interesting is that despite their different reputations and stages of their careers, both men were 33 years old. On fight night, Walcott came out apparently ignorant of the odds. His speed, footwork, and overall awkward, jerky style had the flat, slow champ bamboozled. It manifested especially in Louis tasting the canvas in both the first and fourth rounds. The champ was in trouble. He was getting beat to the punch, and the only real success he saw was the landing of his jab. He just couldn't catch up to or hurt Jersey Joe, and the boxing lesson was unfolding that was sure to produce a new champion. Walcott stayed away to avoid a KO comeback in the final rounds because he was thought to be so far ahead on points. At the final bell, it was almost certain. Louis attempted to leave before the decision, ashamed at his performance, and all but admitting defeat. Referee Ruby Goldstein had Walcott the winner, but the other judges gave it to Louis, and thus it was a split decision robbery. The crowd booed their disgust, and Walcott waved in acknowledgement of their love. Louis went over to Walcott, shook his hand, and said, "I'm sorry, Joe." He offered Jersey Joe an immediate rematch. BoxingPedia Log, June 25th, 1948. The stakes are crucial for the now 34-year-old Warriors. Joe Louis is out to avenge a poor performance and prove to himself he's the true champ. Jersey Joe Walcott is out to make sure there can be no denying his rightful place as champ. Let's dance again, gentlemen. The Brown Bomber started off much more determined this time, but the same events transpired. Walcott was too masterful a boxer for Louis to get a hold of. Speed, footwork, the jab, head movement, combinations. It was the same problem for the champ. Even another knockdown in the third round in favor of the challenger. Still, he marched forward, foaming at the mouth for his chance to knock out Jersey Joe. Thing is, had things continued this way, we'd be reflecting on history differently. But they didn't. Walcott had grown cocky after the first fight, in and out of the ring, and found himself mixing it up with Louis, like a moth to the flame, even as Walcott's corner warned him against it. In the 11th, the Brown Bomber caught Jersey Joe in the pocket with a stiff right, while Walcott was showing off his head movement. It drove the challenger to the ropes, where he exchanged with the champion. That culminated in a swinging Walcott getting caught with another big right, followed by a flurry worthy of history, that sent Jersey Joe to the canvas. He tried to shake the cobwebs free before rising, but he was counted out. The boxing public and Joe Louis had been vindicated. It was a callback to the magic that was Joe's prime as the unbeatable heavyweight gatekeeper. Joe confirmed it was his last fight in the post-fight, capping off a perfect career as the greatest heavyweight ever, at least up to that point. 25 title defenses has still yet to be toppled almost 80 years later. With nothing left to prove, he sped off into the sunset. BoxingPedia log, June 22nd, 1949. A vacant heavyweight crown, and two hand-picked competitors to wage war over it. Joe Louis personally promoted this bout for the National Boxing Association portion of his undisputed title between Jersey Joe Walcott and Ezzard Charles, the top two ranked contenders. The rest of the powers that be, like Ring Magazine and the New York State Athletic Commission, weren't so sure, and therefore this wasn't an undisputed bout. Despite the expected excitement, this bout wound up being a disappointment. Both men fought too safe and were unwilling to take any risks. The lacking in low-quality footage left to us is perhaps a symbol of this. Maybe the fight was a bore fest because of a combination of these two things. Charles was a mentally different fighter after he'd inflicted injuries on Sam Barowdi that led to the latter's death. Walcott may have been in super safe mode after he'd gotten too close to the fire against Joe Louis. Both men's trauma happened in the previous year. Anyway, Charles won a 15-round unanimous decision and was the new champion. He couldn't get a shot at the light heavyweight title, so he jumped up and won the heavyweight crown. This was Walcott's third failed attempt to win the heavyweight title, and he was now the only man to challenge so many times and come up short. Neither Charles nor Walcott were recognized as legit successors to Joe Louis, but at least they had one another. It was the birth of a new, long rivalry. BoxingPedia log, September 27th, 1950. In the past year, Ezzard Charles has had 3 uneventful title defenses, further cementing the public's criticism in relation to former champion Joe Louis. So who better than Louis himself to be Charles's 4th title defense? The Brown Bomber has come out of retirement due to financial issues. It's the perfect opportunity for both men. Charles can vindicate his reign, and Louis can make history by becoming the first man to reclaim the heavyweight title. Although Charles has a valid claim to the lineage due to his win over top-ranked Jersey Joe Walcott, Joe Louis's return and the fact that he was not beaten means the Brown Bomber holds the final claim. On top of this, the NYSAC and Ring Magazine have confirmed their titles are on the line. So let's rumble. Ezzard Charles managed to do what Jersey Joe couldn't. He stood in front of Joe Louis and avoided being decked, while outboxing, outmaneuvering, and overall schooling the American hero. Louis's jab was landing, and he did swirl one of Charles's eyes shut, but he was busted up himself through the bout, and was even in trouble at one point in the 14th. The fact that Louis couldn't punish Charles as he'd done Walcott spoke volumes on his regression. I think he hit Charles more often than he had Walcott. The Cincinnati Cobra, as a 2-1 underdog, was now the undisputed champion. Well, almost. The British Boxing Board of Control recognized Lee Saville as champion. Louis, who did not return to retirement, would go on to beat Saville. This led to the BBB of C finally recognizing Charles, making him universally recognized as the undisputed champion at long last. BoxingPedia log, March 7th, 1951. Mr. Undisputed Ezzard Charles is entering the next chapter of his rivalry with Jersey Joe Walcott. Since they last met, Walcott has become a fan favorite, and he has the people behind him. Outside of some spurts of excitement behind Walcott bashing Charles and the champion dropping Jersey Joe in the 9th, this fight was as relatively uneventful as the first. Well, at least by the standards of the time. Walcott appeared more comfortable this time and behaved as if he thought he was ahead. When the dust settled, Charles was given another unanimous decision. This time, the crowd and Walcott openly disagreed. Walcott said that he was robbed. Gotta imagine his frustration has built to a boiling point, given this was his 4th failed attempt at winning the title. It was the Cincinnati Cobra's 7th title defense, and he remained undisputed. BoxingPedia log, July 18th, 1951. Just 4 months later, the rivalry is on again. Ezzard Charles is once again welcoming the challenge of Jersey Joe Walcott. This is becoming a played out record at this point. Is the division really so lacking in contenders? The now familiar foes engaged in much of the same action. Some good shots here and there, tying up, the pendulum barely shifting. Again, Walcott was the fan favorite, but a 9-1 underdog. It didn't look like it, as the two appeared evenly matched, if not a slight edge toward Walcott. In the 7th, this series of fights became a true rivalry, when Jersey Joe strolled into the champion and dished a left hook that left Charles flat on his face. He rose, but crumbled, falling on his back. He was counted out, and there was a new heavyweight world champion. Jersey Joe Walcott was now the oldest heavyweight champion in history at 37 years of age. It took 5 attempts, but he did it. It ain't over till it's over. Never give up. BoxingPedia log, October 26, 1951. The rising, shining Rocky Marciano is making the biggest step up in competition of his young career against Joe Louis. Since losing to Ezzard Charles, the Brown Bomber has built an 8-fight win streak and is the favorite heading into this affair. Marciano is exciting, known for his knockouts and explosive fights, but can he stand against the experience and reputation of the former champ? Louis initially fought well behind his jab, expending his energy to keep the fight mid-ring. Of course, he couldn't keep this up, and he became a stationary target, which The Rock could bang away at. It didn't help Joe that Rocky was moving him around the ring, showcasing an unexpected superior level of strength. Endless pressure and crowding culminated in the 8th. A left hook sent Louis down. He answered, but was ultimately overwhelmed by a bloodthirsty Marciano who just kept coming forward and jamming him up on the ropes. Rocky blasted Louis through the ropes, and it was over by TKO. The Brockton blockbuster was on the map. He'd entered the rivalry strong and banished Louis from it as the Brown Bomber retired for good. Now that we've reached the end of the year, 1951 would be the only year where all 4 kings were active against some form of one another. You may think it's the peak of the rivalry, but I'd invite you to keep watching before making up your mind. BoxingPedia log, June 5th, 1952. 4 times the charm? We're about to see, and for whom. Jersey Joe Walcott welcomes the challenge of Ezzard Charles. World Heavyweight Championship on the line. The Cincinnati Cobra is aiming to become the first man to reclaim the title. The in-ring action returned to the style of the first 2 bouts. Once again, there were good exchanges here and there, and even moments where either man was wobbled, but it was dull enough. No knockdowns, almost a stalemate. Charles did show aggression and even desperation late in the fight, proving the result of the previous bout had not ruined his confidence. This time around, Walcott was given a unanimous decision akin to how Charles was beforehand. Also similar was the controversy surrounding said decision. The repeated warnings for low blows toward Charles were thought to have hindered him. The press gave a slight edge to Charles, and of course, he thought he won himself. Charles admitted himself that he knew Jersey Joe would not fight him again. So no tiebreaker. These two are deadlocked at 2 wins apiece forevermore. Who do you think would have won a hypothetical 5th matchup? BoxingPedia log, September 23, 1952. The 38-year-old heavyweight champion has closed the book on Ezzard Charles. There's a young bull looking to secure the title, and he has the clout on his side. Rocky Marciano retired Joe Louis, who Jersey Joe could never officially get one over. Walcott is a fan favorite, but Marciano may have a slight edge there. It's age versus youth, experience versus grit, skill versus savagery. Walcott wore his confidence on his sleeve, assuring he would beat The Rock. The fight had an exciting opening. Walcott executed the same walk-in left hook he ended Ezzard Charles' reign with. Marciano, like Charles, crashed to the canvas. It was the first time The Rock had ever been down. The difference, however, was that he got up and was still in the fight. In hindsight, that was very telling, and you've got to wonder what that may have done to Jersey Joe's psyche. The two engaged back and forth, with Jersey Joe getting the better of the challenger. Marciano was running out of time and was getting pieced up as the champ's promise inched toward reality. By the 13th, Walcott was well ahead. At one point, the two warriors loaded up right hands and fired them off. Marciano landed first, and it more than paid off. Jersey Joe was out cold, and the Brockton blockbuster, in a comeback, was the new heavyweight champion of the world. One of the best title bouts in heavyweight boxing history. BoxingPedia log, May 15, 1953. Fight fans expected a repeat of the beauty that was their first bout. Now Rocky Marciano was the champion and Jersey Joe Walcott was the challenger. If he wins, he's the oldest heavyweight champ all over again and the first man to reclaim the title. In the opening round last time, Walcott dropped Marciano. This time, Rocky dropped Jersey Joe. The difference, Walcott was counted out. Looks like that loss last year stripped him of his confidence, something you may remember did not happen to Ezzard Charles in a similar case. Jersey Joe Walcott retired after this match. I've got an honest question. Did Walcott take a dive here? Let me know what you think. BoxingPedia log, June 17, 1954. 2 down, 2 remain. Both champion Rocky Marciano and challenger Ezzard Charles beat Joe Louis and Jersey Joe Walcott. It boils down to them now to decide the King of Kings. Marciano was rising and undefeated, while Charles is inconsistent and blemished. Footage is limited, so I'll give you the rundown. As expected, Charles' superior boxing ability netted in the first 4 rounds. Despite suffering bad cuts, Marciano continued bulldogging forward and pressing the challenger, who became more defensive for whatever reason. He took the lead by the 9th. No matter how many excellent combinations Charles put together, Marciano stormed forward and lashed out with his endless barrage of bombs. Reminds me of Evander Holyfield, and how he would get hit, and instead of backing away, he'd get mad and want to hit his man back harder. The champ continued fighting as if he were behind all the way to the final bell as he busted up Charles. Both men were battered, and the unanimous decision went to the champion. Charles is down in history as the only man to go the championship 15-round distance with Marciano. Charles felt he'd won What Else Is New, and a rematch was slated. What a fight from these two gladiators. BoxingPedia log, September 17th, 1954. The grand finale. This is the last call. Soak it all in. The first bout between champion Rocky Marciano and former champion Ezzard Charles was exactly what one would expect from two championship-level fighters. In it, Charles shedded his reputation for being a boring fighter and went head-to-head with the Brockton blockbuster. What's going to happen this time? History tells us that it isn't likely to happen again, but then again, Charles was thought to be past his championship form, and he shocked everyone last time. Let's see. Charles fought for the knockout this time, not to outbox the champion. He won the first, but was knocked down in the second. He reverted to his defensive nature, and Rocky remained on the offense, a mirroring of the first bout. Once again, Marciano leapt ahead under this pace. Just when it looked like it was going to be a repeat, though a duller rendition, Marciano's nose started pouring blood like a faucet in the sixth. Despite his corner's best efforts to contain the injury, Charles opened up and exclusively targeted the champ's nose. Rocky was running out of time, as his nose was horribly split up the nostril, bleeding profusely, and Charles was starting to believe. His corner advised he go to the body, but The Rock said screw all that and went out for the kill. Knowing the fight would be stopped sooner rather than later, Marciano knocked the Cincinnati Cobra out in the 8th round. It's all over. Rocky Marciano was the king without an equal. He would go on in 1955 to defeat Don Cockle and end his career in a classic matchup against Archie Moore. He retired on top, undefeated in 1956 at 49-0. Charles fizzled out, retiring in 1959. Let's tally up the rivalry. Louis beat Walcott twice but fell to Charles and Marciano. Walcott beat Charles twice but lost to Louis, Charles, and Marciano twice apiece to each. Charles beat Walcott and Louis but fell to Marciano and Walcott twice. Then there's Marciano, who beat them all. I guess that makes him the winner. What if Joe Louis were the Brown Bomber of old? How would that shape this four-way rivalry? Either way, from 1947 to 1954, the lore of heavyweight boxing received chapter after chapter of richness that we'll forever be able to look back on and marvel at. The Louis-Walcott duology, the Walcott-Charles quadrilogy, the Marciano-Walcott duology, and the Marciano-Charles duology would all be tremendous rivalries on their own. But the fact that they happened successively and within the same era, boosting all four men to immortality, is astonishing. Joe Louis was already immortal. This was a bonus. Thank you, gentlemen. This serves as a good throwback to when fighters fought. Imagine today if we had a rivalry to look back on that consisted of Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, and Anthony Joshua. We had a three-headed monster, and the fights weren't made well outside of Fury and Wilder. It would have been glorious. I hope you enjoyed this look back in time and preview of a timeline of the 1950s heavyweight boxing division. It begins releasing tomorrow, so subscribe and ring the bell to be notified. Channel members, my champs, have had access to the series since September, so consider joining today for the same benefits and more. This is the Charles Jackson, author of the Boxing Encyclopedia, and I'll see you in my next log. Thank you.